The talk will be about conservation. And, there's this idea that, you have a large area of forest or landscape that were, whatever, like void and untouched and, yeah, beautiful and things like that. It's just almost like a dream. But this is not actually consistent with reality. Recent research has shown that around 75% of land on the planet has been reshaped by humans for the past 12,000 years, which is consistent with what even you know based on human history on Earth. So it's not really consistent with reality, the idea that, there were some sort of vast expanse of land untouched, never touched by humans. No, there has been at different period of time in history, some sort of human influences. Even areas that look like, let's say, primary forest, because that term is not actually accurate. You have to modify primary forest with the term mature forest, because it's a kind of forest that does not show any, let's say, recent sign of human activity. So you can have forest succession from young secondary, old secondary to mature forest, but it's not actually a primary forest per se. So there's no such thing like pristine environment with no human influence, because humans have been there reshaping. So they have been influencing mostly by different type of activities. So when you see a land, expanse of land, there are locals there, or locals were there at some point. It's more likely. That's why the new research is very interesting, because 75% of the land on Earth is quite big. It shows that human dispersion on Earth has really affected what we see today. So those who went to the Americas in the 16, 17, 1800, and they marvel at what they saw, and rightly so, they didn't realize that this has been the product of thousands of years of interaction between the indigenous communities that live there and the environment. So I think it's more realistic to think of, let's say, the planet, even the whole planet, as a social ecological system. Just because an ecological system purely is more like, okay, you have like humans that are out of the system and everything is just happening. Yeah, perhaps before the appearance of humans on Earth, that will be consistent with reality. But human history on Earth is very long, it's quite long. So it's inconsistent to believe that nature was just separate from human. So it's more consistent with reality, the idea that there's a big, giant social, ecological. Social is like humans, human actors and institutions, and ecological is the bio-geophysical unit that is attached to those humans that shaped it. So there's a kind of, let's say, mutual interaction, a feedback between the two components. So they influence each other. So people will shape the environment, and they too will be affected by that environment. So it's best to understand this. It's important to grasp this concept of social ecological system, because it will be very important for the rest of the presentation. It's an important concept. So these people who live there, they have develop a very, very solid understanding of their natural environment. Because this is what allowed them to thrive for thousands of years. When there were natural disasters, when there were different type of difficult situations, they were able to develop the type of knowledge that allowed them to cope with adverse environmental conditions. So local knowledge is very, very important. So they knew how to manage the nature. They knew how to conserve it. But what happened is that after the Middle Ages, around the 17, 1800s, the idea of modern conservation started to emerge. And modern conservation is more about this idea of protected areas, This is why I started. The first protected area is not the Yellowstone National Park in the US. Actually, the first one was created in the late 1700s in Mongolia. But just side note. But yeah, so around the 1800, these modern conservation ideas, they arose. And it was more about creation of protected area and parks where the local people living in the area were excluded. They didn't have any ownership or control over those lands that were classed as protected areas. And then you had this approach also that came at some point, the community-based conservation, where at some point they gave some control to local people who were living around protected areas, because the idea of protected area was more like, okay, we find a nice place that is very rich, and then we assign to conservation, but still there are people living around. So at some point now, these people were allowed to own and to manage officially pieces of land. So this idea of protection of the 1800s, it was really, really promoted based on really, I would say, faulty philosophy. It wasn't really accurate because, first of all, you see this type of worldview that, okay, nature is like a commodity that can be just exploited, extracted to maximize profit. No, this is not consistent, at least, because human diversity on Earth, the diversity of human cultures on Earth is very, very, very broad. You may have a culture maybe here, but if you travel, I don't know, even within Western Europe, you have different type of cultures. It's not exactly the same. Even though broadly they are going to be, they can form a cluster, a cultural cluster, but even then individually you have different cultures. Even in Flanders, you have differences among people. So what about even at the scale of the whole planet? Of course, this type of worldview will not make sense. Maybe it will make sense for 10% of people on the planet, and 90% of people on the planet will not hold this worldview because for them, nature will be considered as a home. Not a commodity, but a home. And a home to do what? A home to be managed, not a commodity to be extracted. You see different philosophies? So people who live in the, let's say, before this creation of protected area, who live in those lands, they had a different philosophies, a different view of nature. Is a home, is my home. This is where I live, and for some, they consider themselves as part of nature. So they have responsibility towards it. So it's not a commodity, and the idea of profit, forget about it. It was a foreign idea. So, and this other worldview that's like, okay, there's an inherent conflict between humans and nature. So people cannot really coexist. If you see a human somewhere and this nature, no, it's not possible. There must be a conflict. Something's wrong. But come on, if this was the case, then it will be chaos everywhere. These people who went to the Americas in the 1700s and they marveled at what they saw. If that was really true, then they would just find chaos everywhere, zero harmony. But what they saw was harmony. So this couldn't be true, at least for those cultures living in those lands, because they have learned how to live in the environment, to respect nature, to keep it. In some context, they regarded nature as one of their own. This means nature had rights. Just like today, we have human rights. No, they were nature rights, and in their legal system, there were laws. Nature was almost like they kind of make nature into a person. So one extra individual within the community who has also rights that should be respected. So this means you cannot violate the laws of nature. So you see the type of connection that these people have with nature. And this wrong idea is that local damage nature. Wow, it was so wrong, and still wrong today. If locals were damaging nature, now again, going back to the same example, but people have lived in the area for tens of thousands of years before the 1700s. What is even 300 years in human history? Is peanut? It's nothing. From 1700 to 2021, what is that in human history? Try to put a scale here, you see, it represents nothing. So if people were really, really, really damaging nature, by the time people arrived there in the 1700s, they will see nothing, only chaos, everything destroyed. But if people kept that type of beautiful nature for thousands of years like that, it means they were not damaging nature. It's not true. I think perhaps these people projected onto other cultures and people what they themselves were. So through their cultural lens, they were reading other people. And they say, what? This is not possible. It's not possible. If we see these people, they live in nature like this, beautiful nature and everything. Nature is in danger. You must do something about it because it's a commodity. Because if you are there, this means you are kind of exploiting it. You are kind of extracting it to maximize profit. So the idea that you are there is something is wrong. So this type of wrong assumptions led to what? The creation of protected areas. Yeah, it's sad to say today, you say, oh yeah, we have conservation, we have protected areas, it's a good thing. No, 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 no. It was created based on injustice. It was created based on ignorance of the rights of the local people. It was created based on dehumanization of the local people. As if they didn't know anything. As if those who come will just discover it were just like, okay, now we have discovered nature and now we know how to manage, completely ignoring the rights, the local knowledge of people who live in the area. Whereas these people, they know so much. You can't imagine how much they know. Working with local people is amazing. You know, I was in Congo last year to, you know, we had like this Okapi mission to investigate Okapis to see if they were somewhere. I didn't have any experience with Okapis because I was working with chimpanzees and gorillas in Cameroon. Then I go to Congo for this Okapi mission. I have zero experience with Okapis and I need to learn about it. Wow, what did I discover? How this person will, this local person, I'm not sure he can really write good English or French, but he will teach me about okapis. Oh my goodness. The behavior, the diet. Of course, I can interpret as a scientist because I understand behavior. But I realize that everything that we know here, that we learn in universities about, you know, we call it science, good. They have it, he knows it, and this is last year. He knows everything about the okapi, everything. He can teach us, all of us here. More knowledge than what you have in books. So I was so humbled to say, wow. So I just took my sheet of paper and I was writing. You know, he was the professor teaching me, you know. But maybe it's not if you have like high school education. But he knows so much. These people, they know. They know more than us. They know more than the scientists. I remember in Cameroon when we were attacked by that gorilla in the forest, and I was completely panicking. I didn't know what to do, and it was just a surprise. And thanks to these two guys working with me, they were the one who helped the situation because they knew what to do, how to behave in the face of an angry gorilla, not the gorilla in the zoo, the gorilla in the forest. Those who get so wild when they see you, when you surprise them, when they have their breakfast in the morning, and they get crazy and they want to just hold you and tear you apart like this. And then all the knowledge that you learn, you just forget about it because you are panicking and you can even pee in your clothes at that moment. Who helped the situation? Who saved the situation? Local people. They knew what to do. They were not panicking like me. They were not, no, they were so quiet and they managed the situation and we escaped. And I was still trembling even after the incident. I was still trembling because it was so frightening. You know, the gorilla, an angry gorilla and a male, a silverback male. You know, I don't wish that you... So this is what happened. And these people now, they were expulsed from this area because they said, well, you can't stay in the forest like this because you are destroying it. So you have to move away. So it was forced relocation of people from the land where they were living. This is what it led to. And then issues started. Is it ecologically sustainable? We don't even know that. Because, for example, in Cameroon, we have this Cameroon, Congo, and Gabon. We have what you call like trinational landscape for conservation. Because you realize that elephants, they don't care about your so-called boundaries. They don't care about your so-called limits. For them, they use the landscape depending on their ecological needs. So when we start fragmenting the landscape, yeah, like this, do you think that the elephant care about this? He doesn't care. The elephant will travel to Congo, to Gabon, to Cameroon because he has ecological requirement. So even this 1800 idea of pieces of land like this, a protected area, I'm not even sure if it makes much ecological sense. And what about carrying capacity? When you have a small enclosure like that, and then some species start multiplying, increasing in number, and then the environment cannot support them anymore. What happens? Did these people think, who thought that they were more knowledgeable than local people to create local protected areas? So And the worst problem, in my opinion, that created this, I would say, I don't know, this philosophy that created is alienation. Local people became alienated. And this problem persists till today. Alienation. Maybe you can forget about anything I said, but at least remember the word alienation because it's a major driver of, let's say, conflict with biodiversity and nature protection today in many lands because people got alienated. And it wasn't like something that just disappeared in the past. It persists until today in society, even among the educated elite. So let's just discuss alienation. Alienation is like, okay, I feel like I'm no longer part of this environment because you kind of remove me. I feel disconnected from it. I was removed there by force. I never agreed. You came here in the 1800s and you find that you were living here for thousands of years and then you thought you knew better than us and then you asked us to move away and by force? No, this is not serious. And you have this order like, okay, I'm no longer the owner. I'm the, because they say, okay, all this land belonged to initially those who were managing it, like who colonized it kind of, and now to government. So my right to it is denied. And I don't even have to use it because some protected areas were like, no use. You can't use. But imagine that you were living on those resources for millennia, and then today they say you cannot use it anymore. You have to rely on what is outside. So people felt like, okay, I have no sense of belonging anymore. I'm now foreigner in my own country. I'm foreigner in my own land. I'm foreigner in my own environment. This is the alienation that is created. I feel abused. I feel abused. I feel like, okay, there's some injustice that was done, that my right may be violated. If you use the 21st century language, we are going to say these were gross human rights violations. So this is what I call alienation. And the alienation has terrible consequences today. It's like, okay, I don't see how this thing will benefit me. Then, well, I don't care what happened to it. It can even burn. It's not my problem. It's your protected area. It belongs to government or those NGOs that care more about animals than humans. This is what they say now. Huh? So, but I won't hesitate to, to loot it or to use it if I get the chance. So this means that the protected area will only survive if you can physically make it impossible for someone to get in there and access the resources. So that's why you see that it didn't work. Actually, it failed, kind of. Because after doing all these protected areas, people continue to enter there to harvest the resources. And they say, okay, let's change the approach. Let's go to the community approach. In the 70s with UNESCO, the man and biosphere, it was more to find how the landscape could be more sustainable by trying to, consider the local community, but just give them some crumbs and say, okay, hopefully you can. So they consider like engaging with community as a whole to help them, not enter in the reserve anymore. But they realized that no, it wasn't working really. Despite the small crumbs they were throwing at them, they kept entering into protected areas to hunt and to use the resources. And then finally, they wanted to involve them more at some point with this idea of integrated conservation and development project. This is where the concept came in the 1990s, where they said, okay, we are going to balance more like conservation and development, and let's do like more bottom-up approach instead of top-down approach, and to have people take more control and ownership. And we are going to give them support, like development support, financial incentives to help them as well. They are going to identify like micro projects within their communities. We are going to provide the funds, and we did that in Cameroon with Projet Grand Singe. There was what we call appui au développement. If you see in all the budget of PGS, are going to see that there was a certain amount of money that was always given. It was part of this type of thing, and Donald was in charge of doing all this conservation. So yes, this approach, it works, but there are some issues. There are some issues there, like the lack of social cohesion to work for the common good. Some societies, it's difficult to put people together and say, okay, we are going to give you this amount of money to fund this micro project, and then some people just don't work best. In some societies or some villages, it's difficult to put people together to work for the same cause. So, and then a lot of initiative will fail because of this lack of social cohesion. Of course, in some contexts it can work better, but not in all contexts. And this problem, which is really, really bad, because the worsening of inequality, the benefit sharing, when you have this type of thing in communities, who benefits? Some people end up not benefiting at all. If people can, can put it in their pocket and then the rest has nothing. And they say, well, it's not benefiting us. So indeed, this was not sufficient to make people stop hunting, stop, using natural resources, even in protected areas. So these are the overview of the approaches. So you have the protection, don't use or else. And this led to what? Alienation. And this community-based with, first of all, some support, but don't go to protected areas, but it didn't work. And then finally, let's find a balance between conservation and development. So this is the overview here. So locals got some control. Now, despite existing approach to conservation, we see that things are not going, it's not working. Look, 95%. Where you work, Steffi, this is 94%. I hope your work can help, reverse this in the next 30 years. Huh? This is bad, really. But in Africa, it's not good either. 65%. Everything is crumbling. 45 and 33 and 24. Maybe Europe is better now than other continents. So good. You see, this is for me like the state of nature today, because what I showed you in the previous slide was biodiversity. But it's not the only problem. You have air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution. You have deforestation. So if you combine it, so this is where we are. That's the thing. Exactly. It's like good art, but it reflects the state of nature where we live today. So we are really, really in big trouble. Just small, I put big, you see how I wrote big? You see? Big like this because we are in big trouble. We are collapsing. Because if the system where we live is collapsing, so are we. We are also collapsing. So the collapsing nature and people who are alienated means there's no harmony. There's no harmony today. So we tried something new. And this is where the PhD was important. Something new to address that problem. Huh? And this is what we call reciprocal environmental agreements. And this work was done, as Jeff said in the introduction, by Jacques, a PhD student that I supervised, together with Stan, who is a professor at Ghent University. So what is a reciprocal environmental agreement? It's a collaborative framework that people come together for a common objective between actors. Who are those actors? Conservation organization. It can be one organization, it can be many organizations. But you have, on the one hand, a conservation organization, and you have the individual, not the community anymore. And they commit to a number of actions, provide support as a conservation organization, and the individual will comply to a number of regulations. And the actions are concrete, like financial support, technical support, educational support, and the individual has to commit to environmental responsibility and more sustainable practices. So, and it's set in such a way that it can achieve maximum objective. Like, you don't come and lecture people anymore. It doesn't work. So you have to negotiate. You meet people locally, even if they don't have shoes and they have old clothes, you talk to them as equal. You forget about your background, your degrees. Forget about it. You negotiate. Can we do this or that? You can maybe draft something, but it has to be negotiated. And the negotiation will lead to what? Commitment. Commitment that I commit to do this. When you commit, now you sign. I commit to reduce my hunting pressure by this amount. I commit to support you in agroforestry. I commit to, you see, it's concrete action. It's not just empty talk. So you sign. And after the signing is what? Implementation. So you take action now in the field, and you have to monitor it to see if you have the personal benefit that were expected as part of the agreement, and if the environment is also benefiting from it. This is how it works. So why we studied it? We studied them because the previous intervention didn't work. You see, when you all what matters is biodiversity, nature, and then you exclude local people, it doesn't work. And if you do community, in some contexts can work in Africa, like in Zimbabwe and these countries, they had success, for example. But sometimes there's also this elite capture, and that worsens inequalities because those who are more influential, they can pocket all the resources, the money, and then the other they don't have anything. And you have also the fact that many conservation have been done in a short time frame. So it's important, therefore, to solve to address this by trying to focus on the individual and to have a more longer time frame and an important monitoring system that lacks in many conservation interventions because many things have been done, but how well they monitor the success of their interventions is lacking. We don't see much result about it. So the aim of the study were therefore to see how this environmental agreement will affect wildlife. But wildlife here, it was more like a model. The broader question is like ecological integrity and the livelihoods as well, and how can that help alleviate poverty? And this will be linked to economic well-being and human wellness. So the study area in Cameroon, the study was done in the JAR, 17 villages in the periphery of the reserve, 220 households, and they were supported in cocoa again, yeah, like, like your case, very good. And fishing as well, fishing materials and things like that. And also a lot of awareness campaign, education and things like that to train. And they will also commit to reduce hunting pressure because hunting is a major threat there. And this was the support provided and the conditionality. Remember the agreement, you have to commit to something. And those who signed the agreement were more like these people who have families and kids, and they are more like farmers. These were those who signed, most of them, these were the participants. The non-participants that you see there in orange, they were mostly younger people with less social responsibilities. And we use transect surveys, in 2 years, 2018 and then 2020. And then we monitor bushmeat offtakes, hunting behavior, protein consumption, and the work was repeated again. This interview and questionnaire about socioeconomic characteristics, household wealth, food security, also wildlife perception is important. And the result now shows the impact of wildlife. It's true that the project was only like 2 years. Let's say the monitoring period for the wildlife was only 2 years. So most, as you see in the graph there, not many changes occurred. We tested it statistically. It wasn't really significant difference except for chimpanzees, where we had a small, significant difference, which is good because you know that in this area, even in 2 years, chimpanzees can disappear in an area because they are very sensitive to disturbance and hunting, so they will not hesitate to go. So the fact that you have even, let's say, additional signs of chimpanzees in an area that's not protected area, in 2 years is a sign that the area has become, let's say, more, suitable for the chimpanzees to feel like they are safe enough to come back. You see? So it's encouraging. And also, you see that overall, the diversity of species, is the same for the 2 years. So it's kind of stable. The community is preserved. And this important parameter is also a very good indicator because Peter was talking about using proxies and things like that. It's a good proxy because if you, let's say, record all the bushmeat, the carcass hunted by hunters, you weight them, it gives you an idea of what is inside the forest. When the forest is already poor and depleted, the mass will go down because it's only small animal rodents that are left. But when the body mass remains constant, it means that the forest is still rich enough to have to allow for good captures like this. When you have between 10 and 12 kilograms per carcass, it means that you have medium-sized mammals that are still available, which is a good sign. So perception with the Likert scale, you see initially they had the same level of, let's say, the same attitude towards wildlife, participation, because they were asked questions initially. And then 4 years later, you see those who were involved with the agreements, how it changes. They were here. They say, I want to participate. Yeah, I agree. But 4 years later, they even agree more. So it means that they had an impact on them. They really like conservation more at that moment. And here it's important to protect wildlife. They had almost the same level in the beginning. And we had a slight increase for the participants than the non-participants. And the impact on livelihoods, we see that bushmeat hunted, those who were involved, right? Those who were involved in the agreements are those with the bar in the blue, yeah. Yeah, you see, initially, of course, they were hunting more. It can be understandable because these are parents with kids and families to feed. But finally, they start like decreasing, and then at the end, you see, they don't hunt more anymore. So these are those who are involved, and you see also that these people who were involved in the agreements, they ate more of their bushmeat, so they sold less, which is important because subsistence hunting is not as destructive as commercial hunting. So if you can manage to shift the livelihood strategy from commercial hunting to just subsistence hunting, we think you have achieved something. Because if everyone becomes just a subsistence hunter, then we are back to the initial social ecological system of the 1700s before massive change happened in the landscape. But this idea of hunting and selling is the commodity, is the nature as commodity idea. Unfortunately, that infested the community. So, and I have to hunt because I need money. You see, here also a good change. Those who participated feel like they don't need to hunt anymore because they need money, because they have other things that are there. So why hunting? And you see also that they realized that in the beginning, hunting was it didn't require a lot of investment, and finally we see that those who were involved thought that no, it required a lot of investment, of course, because they have other things to do. So they feel like, why investing so much time in hunting? And the effect on poverty, we see also that their wealth increased. Those who were involved in the agreements, their wealth has increased, and they also made more money on cocoa. Again, this stuff is linked to everything, it's connected to everything. They made more money on cocoa, and their food insecurity also decreased. So they became more food secure also. And we see also that for this, the breakdown of the food insecurity levels, we see that it's a big change, from severely to mildly food insecure, those participated. So it's good, it's a good sign that they are progressing in the good direction. So a few discussion points is that, okay, these two factors has explained actually, in my own opinion, the change in, let's say, the stability of the wildlife population, because this happened during COVID years. In COVID year, they were saying, okay, don't hunt because you're going to get COVID. So I think that it might have had some influence on the outcome that we see. And also the ammunition scarcity during that time, perhaps also accounted for the fact that we had a positive impact on wildlife. So you can't say everything was just based on the agreement, because not everyone was involved in the first place, and the wider population of those living nearby, they were not, of course, involved, so they will still hunt. But so I think that other factors like this were also important factors that stabilized the wildlife community. And here we see that the livelihood practice that were promoted really helped, because then people, they have skills, they have technical support. Stephen was talking about, agroforesting technique. It's not something, it requires a lot of let's say, skills. So we brought in some specialists in agriculture who will train them, and now they will feel like they are equipped with the skill that they need to run an economic activity sustainably. So it influenced the way they perceive their livelihood. And also the economic incentives that are provided through the sale in cocoa and the fish, also the fish sales, will help them to get assets. A lot of them, they got savings actually, which is very rare in the area. Savings, and they bought stuff like this based on the money that they made. So, and only in 4 years, which is really amazing. So the final thought is that this type of approach can really be good to protect biological integrity, but also physical integrity. Because what the negotiation and the signing that was done for wildlife could also be done for deforestation, for example, for landowners, and say, okay, you have to cut less tree, for example. You can transfer those skills or those knowledge to deforestation. And if more land is not deforested, it means that the physical integrity is also preserved, and you can apply it to even pollution, less emissions, CO2, or less pollution. And the basic point here is that this type of agreement can be transferred or applied to any type of situation. You can get the type of the same outcome. So this is ecological integrity. And also, they can improve the economic well-being, because people now will feel secure in their livelihoods. They make more money, and they have the means to continue to do so. So it improves their economic well-being. And also here, you see this wellness wheel. Yes, it can contribute, for example, the environmental, because if you live in an environmentally clean environment because you are cutting less trees or because you are hunting less, then it's also good for you get benefit from that type of clean environment. And physical through nutrition, if your food security is improved, it's also good. And intellectual through the training that we provided, because we taught them new techniques and things like that, so they benefit intellectually. So all these components are part of what make human feel good. It's not just about, I have money in the bank account and that's fine. No, you need to have all these things. So you see three components that this type of agreement contribute to. So based on that, you can say, yeah, there's hope. Huh? Remember I told you about alienation? How can you reverse the alienation? It's possible. Invest in individuals, because when you invest in communities, sometimes you don't have the benefits equally shared. So target the number of individuals who are willing to join, invest in them with education, technical skills, and finance. And you will see that you are going to have this economic well-being and human wellness, and the socially things will be good. And you also have positive impact on the environment. People will feel like, wow, these things are actually working. We don't need to always hunt or to do this because we have other things to do, and then the ecological will be good. So if the social and the ecological are good, then it means that, yeah, there's harmony again, harmony is back. And this is what we need to have today, because if there's no harmony between people and nature, we're going to have continuous chaos until everything collapses. So we need that harmony back. And this is the potential that the reciprocal environmental agreements have in restoring back that harmony. So this approach, I will not really, is good, but as far as you can enforce it with physical means, it's good. And this one, it has some issues, but it can work in some contexts. I would say for the future, let's go for reciprocal environmental agreement, because this one has the potential to convert the individual. It has the potential to change people's mindset, to make them see things differently. And if you win people one by one, you're going to win a world card. And before that, the whole country. And this how it works. So let's go for this. We think that this is the future. So thank you for listening. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask.